What if the reason you feel stuck isn't because you lack talent, but because you're missing something invisible, something small, something quiet, something no one really talks about, and yet it's the exact thing high achievers rely on every single day. Not motivation, not luck, not even discipline in the way you think. Something deeper, something hidden. And here's the uncomfortable part. You've probably felt it before. That moment when you knew what you should do, but didn't do it. Not because you couldn't, but because something inside you resisted. You hesitated. You delayed. You chose the easier option. And it felt normal. Be honest. Does this feel familiar? Because this is where the gap begins. The gap between where you are and where you could be. Now wait till you hear this. High achievers feel the same resistance, the same doubt, the same laziness, the same distractions. They're not different because they don't struggle. They're different because of how they respond. And that response comes from a mindset most people never build. Now here's where it gets real. Most people think success is about doing more work, more effort, more hustle. But high achievers? They focus on something else entirely. They focus on alignment. Not doing everything, but doing the right things consistently. And that sounds simple, but it changes everything. Because when you're not aligned, everything feels harder than it should. You overthink, you procrastinate, you start things and don't finish them. And slowly, you start doubting yourself. Now this next part, this is where everything shifts. What if the problem isn't your effort, but your identity? What if you're trying to act like someone you don't believe you are yet? Think about it. You try to be disciplined, but deep down, you see yourself as inconsistent. You try to focus, but you believe you're easily distracted. So every action feels forced, temporary, unnatural. And eventually, you fall back. Not because you're weak, but because your identity pulls you back to what's familiar. Now here's the hidden truth. High achievers don't fight their identity. They rebuild it. Slowly, intentionally, daily. They don't just say, "I'll work harder." They say, "This is who I am now." And then, they prove it. Not once, but repeatedly. Now let me ask you something. Who do you believe you are when no one is watching? Not who you want to be, not who you pretend to be, but who you default to. Because that version of you is running your life. And if you don't change that, nothing else will stick. Now here's where it gets deeper. Most people wait for confidence. They wait to feel ready. They wait until it feels natural. But high achievers? They do the opposite. They act first and let confidence catch up. Because confidence isn't the starting point, it's the result. Now think about that. How many things have you delayed just because you didn't feel ready? And how many of those things still haven't been done? So why does this keep happening? Why do we keep choosing comfort even when we know it's costing us? Because your brain is designed to keep you safe, not successful. Safe means predictable, familiar, easy. But growth? Growth is uncertain, uncomfortable, sometimes even painful. So your mind resists it, not because it's wrong, but because it's new. Now here's where high achievers separate themselves. They expect resistance. They don't see it as a stop sign. They see it as confirmation, a signal that they're moving in the right direction. And that changes everything. Because instead of stopping, they lean in. Now this next part, this is where most people hesitate. Because understanding this is one thing, but applying it is something else entirely. And that's where the real transformation begins. And this is where things start to feel different. Because now, you can't unsee it. That resistance you feel, it's not a problem, it's a signal. A quiet indicator that you're about to step outside the version of yourself you've been living in. But here's where most people go wrong. They interpret resistance as a reason to stop. I'm not ready. This isn't the right time. Maybe later. And just like that, they return to what's familiar. Now here's the part nobody tells you. Every time you choose comfort over growth, you reinforce the identity you're trying to escape. It's subtle, but powerful. Because your brain is always collecting evidence. Every action you take is a vote for the type of person you believe you are. So when you avoid, you're telling yourself, this is who I am. And over time, that belief becomes solid. Now wait till you hear this. High achievers understand something most people ignore. They don't chase big wins. They collect small proofs, tiny actions, daily decisions, moments where they do the hard thing, even when it doesn't feel important, because those moments stack, they compound, they build identity. Now think about this. What if success isn't about one big breakthrough, but thousands of small confirmations? That you are who you say you are. Now here's where it gets real. This process is boring, repetitive, unexciting, sometimes even frustrating, and that's why most people quit. Because they're addicted to intensity. They want fast results, quick changes, instant progress. But real growth? It's quiet, almost invisible. Until one day, it's undeniable. Now this next part changes everything. High achievers don't rely on how they feel. They rely on systems. Because feelings are unstable. Some days you feel focused, some days you don't. But systems? They keep you moving regardless. And that's powerful. Because it removes the need to decide every day. You don't ask, do I feel like doing this? You already know. It's just what you do. Now let me ask you something. What in your life right now depends on your mood, your work, your habits, your consistency? Because if it depends on how you feel, it's unreliable. And that's why progress feels inconsistent. Now here's where things shift again. Instead of trying to control your emotions, you control your environment. You remove distractions. You simplify choices. You make the right action easier and the wrong one harder. And suddenly, discipline feels less like a battle and more like a default. Now here's the uncomfortable truth. You don't rise to your goals. You fall to your systems. So if your systems are weak, your results will be too. Now this next part, this is where it gets personal. Because building this mindset requires honesty. Real honesty. Not the kind where you say, I'll try harder, but the kind where you admit, I've been avoiding what matters. That's hard to say. Most people won't, so they stay stuck. Now let me say something most people won't admit. I used to think the problem was lack of motivation, that something was wrong with me, that I just couldn't stay consistent. But the truth? I wasn't broken. I was just undisciplined in what I allowed. Allowed distractions, allowed excuses, allowed inconsistency. And once I saw that, everything changed. Now think about your own life. What are you currently allowing that's keeping you stuck? Take a second, because this question matters more than it seems. Now here's where it all connects. The hidden mindset of high achievers isn't about doing more. It's about allowing less. Less distraction, less negotiation, less excuses, and more clarity, more intention, more control. Now this next part, this is where everything starts to transform. Because once you stop allowing what's holding you back, you create space for something better, something stronger, something more aligned. And this is where the shift becomes real. Not just something you understand, but something you start to feel. Because once you remove what's holding you back, you notice something strange. You're not as overwhelmed, not as scattered, not as mentally tired. And that's when it hits you. You were never lacking energy. You were leaking it. Into distractions, into overthinking, into things that didn't matter. And no one tells you this part, because it's easier to say, work harder, than it is to admit, you're focusing on the wrong things. Now wait till you hear this. High achievers don't protect their time, they protect their energy. Because time alone doesn't guarantee progress. You can spend hours doing something and still move nowhere. But energy? Energy determines the quality of those hours. And once you understand that, everything changes. Now here's the question most people avoid. Where is your energy going right now? Is it building your future or just maintaining your comfort? Don't answer quickly, because your habits already have. Now here's where it gets uncomfortable again. Protecting your energy means making decisions that not everyone will understand. Saying no more often, stepping back from certain people, letting go of things that feel good but lead nowhere. And that can feel isolating. But here's the truth. Growth often is. Now this next part, this is where most people hesitate, because they don't want to be seen as too much, too focused, too serious, too disciplined, so they hold back. They dilute their effort to stay comfortable around others, and slowly, they lose momentum. Now let me ask you something. Are you holding yourself back just to fit into environments that don't challenge you? Be honest, because this is more common than people admit. Now here's where high achievers think differently. They don't ask, will people understand me? They ask, is this aligned with who I'm becoming? And that question changes your standards. Because now, you're not making decisions based on comfort. You're making them based on growth. Now this next part changes everything. High achievers are selective, not just with their time, but with their thoughts. They don't entertain every doubt. They don't feed every insecurity. They don't give attention to every distraction, because attention is power. And wherever you place it, you strengthen it. So if you constantly focus on problems, you'll feel stuck. If you focus on distractions, you'll feel scattered. But if you focus on progress, even small progress, you start to feel in control. Now think about that. What are you strengthening every day without realizing it? Now here's the deeper layer. This mindset isn't built overnight. It's built in moments, small decisions, repeated daily. When you choose focus over distraction, action over delay, growth over comfort, those moments shape you, quietly, powerfully. Now this next part, this is where everything gets tested, because there will be days when you don't feel like doing any of this, days when it feels pointless, slow, unrewarding. And this is where most people quit, not because it's too hard, but because it's not exciting anymore. Now here's the truth. Boredom is part of the process. Repetition is part of the process. Doing the same things over and over again is part of the process. And high achievers? They don't resist that. They embrace it. Because they understand something most people don't. Mastery is built in the mundane. Now let me say that again. Mastery is built in the mundane. Not in big moments, but in small, consistent ones. Now here's a quiet challenge. When things get boring, do you stay or do you escape? Because that answer reveals everything. Now this next part, this is where it all comes together, where you stop chasing something outside of you and start building something within. And this is where everything finally connects. Not as an idea, but as a decision. Because at this point, you already know what matters. You already know what's been holding you back. The distractions, the delays, the quiet excuses that felt justified. And now, you can see them clearly. And once you see them, you have a choice. You either go back to them, or you move forward without them. Now here's where it gets real. Moving forward doesn't feel dramatic. There's no big moment, no sudden transformation. It's quieter than that. It looks like waking up and doing what you said you would do, even when it's inconvenient, even when it's repetitive, even when no one is watching. Because this is the part nobody celebrates: consistency. But it's the only thing that actually works. Now think about this. What if your life doesn't change because you're waiting for something big, when it really depends on something small, something daily, something simple, something you've been avoiding? That thought alone should make you pause, because it means your future isn't far away. It's built in what you do today. Now this next part changes everything. High achievers don't wake up motivated. They wake up committed. Committed to a standard. Committed to a version of themselves they refuse to fall below. And that's powerful. Because standards don't depend on feelings. They don't change based on mood. They stay consistent. And over time, they shape your identity. Now let me ask you something. What is your current standard? Not what you say it is, but what your actions prove it is. Because that's the truth. And if that truth makes you uncomfortable, good. That's where change begins. Now here's where most people hesitate again. They realize what needs to change, but they try to change everything at once, and that never works. Because it's overwhelming, unrealistic, unsustainable. So instead, you do something different. You start small, but you stay consistent. You pick one thing, one action, one standard, and you commit to it. Daily. No negotiation, no excuses. And over time, that one change creates momentum. And momentum? That's where transformation lives. Now here's the deeper truth. You don't need a new life. You need new habits. Because your habits are your life. They determine how you spend your time, how you use your energy, how you respond to challenges. And if your habits don't change, nothing else will. Now this next part, this is where everything stabilizes. You stop chasing perfection. You stop expecting instant results. You focus on showing up, again and again, even when progress feels slow. Because you understand something now. Slow progress is still progress, and consistency over time always wins. Now here's the final shift. You stop doubting yourself as much. Not because everything is perfect, but because you're proving something to yourself every day. That you can follow through, that you can stay consistent, that you can become someone stronger. And that builds trust. The most important kind of trust. Self-trust. Because once you trust yourself, everything becomes easier. Decisions, actions, commitment. You don't hesitate as much. You don't overthink every step. You just move. Now let's bring it back. The hidden mindset high achievers use daily. It's not hidden because it's complicated. It's hidden because most people ignore it. It's built on simple things: consistency, focus, standards, control. Done daily, without excuses, without drama, without waiting. And that's what makes it powerful. So here's the only thing that matters now. What are you going to do differently after this moment? Not tomorrow, not next week, now. Because nothing changes until you do. And if this felt real to you, if something in this hit a little deeper than expected, don't scroll past it. Don't ignore it. Sit with it. Think about it. And then act on it. Even if it's small. Even if it's uncomfortable. Because that's how it starts. And that's how it grows. If this stayed with you, keep going. Not perfectly, but consistently. That's all it takes.